Welcome to Shrinks Who Drink with Amita Ghosh. This monthly podcast dives into special topics in mental health, exploring themes like motivation, anxiety, trauma, and depression. Each episode is designed to engage, inform, and inspire as we journey together toward the incredible India Therapists Retreat in October 2025. Join us for candid conversations with expert guests, sharing their lived experiences and professional insights. And don't miss the wisdom-packed closing segment, where we hear from therapists you'll meet at the retreat. Let's spill some tea, share some stories, and build a stronger mental health community, one episode at a time. Your host, Amita Ghosh, is a passionate mental health advocate and professional dedicated to fostering meaningful discussions around mental wellness. With a knack for storytelling and a love for connecting with others, Amita brings warmth, insight, and a touch of humor to every episode. Get ready to explore deep topics, hear unique perspectives, and gain practical advice as Amita leads the way to our shared destination, the incredible India Therapists Retreat in October 2025. Now let's get started.
Well, welcome to Shrinks Who Drink. This is Amita Ghosh. I am coming to you from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I am so excited to have Dr. Albert Bramante, a seasoned travel agent, talent agent, and with more than 2 decades of experience in the entertainment industry. He holds a PhD in psychology from Walden University, and additionally, he is a certified hypnotherapist and NLP practitioner, bringing a unique blend of psychological insight and practical expertise to his work. Driven by a passion for both the performing arts and human psyche, Albert embarked on a mission to empower actors to overcome self sabotage and unlock their full potential throughout his impressive career. Dr. Bramante has achieved remarkable success as a talent agent, securing roles for actors in a wide array of productions, including TV shows, films, commercials, Broadway, and off Broadway performances. So I am very, very lucky to have Dr. Bramante here with us. And I want to just jump in and have you tell us whatever you want to share about yourself, starting with, maybe a little bit of your journey.
Sure. Well, thank you, Amita, for having me on here. I'm really, really honored to be on this podcast. And, so I have a background in psychology. I have a PhD. Started off, I was just always interested in the human mind and the human psyche. And so I majored in psychology, did that for my bachelor's and my master's degree. And through that time, I was always interested in creative arts. Whether it's movement, whether it was acting, I was always interested in that. Not necessarily being an actor myself, but just interested in the artwork itself, the
Yeah,
creative flow. So because I took some classes in college, electives in theater and in acting. And then I also was in the high school drama club when I was in high school. So I was very interested in, anything involved in the creative
yeah,
arts. And so I found myself really drawn to actors,
yeah,
energetically in a sense. It was like a really source of inspiration for me to be around actors and how much I just loved being around actors. So I started to work on different areas. I worked volunteered at film festivals. See, I'm near New York City, which is a hub for the entertainment industry on the East
right.
Coast.
Hmm.
So I would start volunteering at film festivals, and eventually I found myself working with actors, helping them with their auditions, helping them with their mindset, working with giving their best selves out, creating, helping them create their best self, put their best foot forward. And it was then when I decided in 2004, I want to do this professionally. So
Yeah,
I opened up my first, firm, my first company, and I started representing actors. And, I had a couple different agencies over the past. I owned a couple different companies. And then eventually, it just evolved to where I am today. So, my company is Bramante Artists. We represent actors of all different types and in age ranges. So this is something that's very passionate of mine is just helping actors. And throughout the time, as I received my doctorate, which I was doing both at the time, being a psychology professor and a talent agent, I finished my PhD in 2015. And for my thesis, my dissertation, I wrote about, actors and self sabotage. And I looked at,
Yeah.
self esteem. I looked at, personality factors, particularly like the Big Five model, which is known as a five factor model personality, as well as self efficacy and fear of success and all of that. I did a large study on that with, 100 about 150 actors for my
So I'm going to ask you a question here. Out of the big five, what would you say is the most common factor that comes up that you see in actors as far as personality traits go?
Usually it's um I would say openness is a major factor because you have to be
Okay.
creative and taking on different characters. And then there's also sometimes a degree of anxiety because there's a lot of self doubt. So high neuroticism, can sometimes act
Oh, okay.
can be high on neuroticism trait. Not a lot, but that just means the emotional reactivity, which can sometimes be helpful for them to, connect to characters that they're playing,
Yeah.
in a sense. And then what the major finding from my study was that I found that with self sabotage or fears, that were, self handicapping or shooting themselves in the foot, was there was a combination. It was high neuroticism and low on the conscientiousness scale.
Okay.
So if those two were combined, that
So
was going to
self-sabotage has something to do with being low on conscientiousness. That's interesting.
yeah, and then high, but also high in neuroticism too.
That I can understand, I can see that, but like low on conscientiousness. Okay.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest predictors of success in whether it's in any field is going to be being conscientious. Like the higher
Mhm.
conscience you are, the more successful you're going to be. And what I found is most people people overestimate how conscientious they are.
Okay.
It isn't until like they take a test like the five factor personality inventory where they realize that, well, maybe I'm not as conscientious as I thought I was going to be.
Right, right.
And a lot of times with actors, they're so wrapped up in the art sometimes that they're not really focusing on the business side of things or taking care of themselves emotionally,
Yeah,
which I
yeah.
think which lowers the conscientiousness level of
Okay.
that.
And I think that like you were saying art, and I see that with artists as well, not just actor performance art, but even other kind of art that, people are very creative. However, they're not necessarily that great at marketing or business and things like that.
Yes, and that's the biggest that that's going to work against the actor success wise if they're not really good in business and marketing, and
Hmm.
that goes with that conscientiousness factor.
Right.
So that because in order to be an effective business or marketer, you have to have a certain degree of conscientiousness
Yeah. You have
and
to be able
and
to push through.
push through. Perseverance is a big thing too.
Yes. Yes.
So I would say those were the major personality factors that are important, and also I would say coming up third would be agreeableness. In a
Yes.
sense,
Hmm.
because being moderately or high in agreeableness means that you're coachable, can be coachable.
Hmm.
And that's a
Yeah.
big factor for success,
Right.
I think, in any profession. Even though
Mhm.
I wrote my book, for actors, I really feel it's applicable to anybody, really, if you think about it, whether you're not, even if you're not an actor,
Yeah.
the actual techniques and things I have in there. So I think just being coachable is a major factor for success. And that's why, like, when I was doing my dissertation and doing my research, I felt like the five factor model was probably the best model of personality that
Yeah.
can fit into what I was, examining and talking about.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to clarify something for those of the audiences who are therapists is that the five factor model really is assessing non-pathological
Yeah,
personality traits, as opposed to the MMPI or MCMI, and those are a little bit more on the pathology side of things. So
yeah,
the five-factor model is really measuring or assessing your personality trait based on so-called normal,
yeah.
not the pathological
I would
trait.
say it's probably more of a vocational tool, or at least, giving you some insight. It's not, I would never, use that if I was working with someone clinically to,
Right,
assess them.
right,
It's good for a general tool, and that's probably one of the reasons why it's free and it's online. Whereas you,
right,
have to have a licensed professional administer the MMBI
right.
or any other
Absolutely,
tool
absolutely.
for that.
So tell us how you use NLP with your clientele.
Well, the first step with one of the fundamentals of NLP is forming your identity.
Okay, so
So
first we have to make sure people know what NLP is. So tell us a
yeah,
little bit about
so
that.
NLP is the study of like human excellence, and it stands for neuro linguistic programming. So it's really about the study of human performance and human excellence. So it all started by looking and modeling off of the more successful people, taking the traits, taking the behaviors, and implementing that into models of success. So that's what I would say it's really based on that, and it really it does have a lot of roots in psychology, in
Yes.
and
Hmm.
also linguistics. So it's kind of that's why it's called neurolinguistic, because you're kind of combining language as well as the nervous system and your neurology,
Okay. Okay.
and how those two work together to really model human excellence.
So can you demonstrate something for us right now so that we have a sense of what that is?
So, very simple tactic, visualization. We talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
In most circles, is how important visualization is. So, what I would say is run scenarios in your mind of, let's say you have to give that presentation, you have to take a test, or you have to give a presentation, or that audition for an actor. Imagine that in your head, go have that play out in your head. So what I often say, from specifically NLP mode, is close your eye and do it in the kind of like an all slightly altered state of, which is like close your eyes in the alpha brainwave state, relaxation,
Okay.
and visualize yourself almost in a movie theater, watching yourself on screen
Okay.
doing whatever it is that you're about to do, whether it's like give that presentation, give that
Yeah.
audition, give that performance, go on that job interview, and you imagine that, run that scenario, that movie in your head of it being a success, an absolute
Yeah.
success,
Okay.
and then even stepping into that feeling, walking into that feeling, and feeling it, seeing it, and hearing it. So there's three main senses that we have. We have auditory, visual, and kinesthetic.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things I often, and I'm not necessarily part of that school of thought that thinks we're superior in one. I think all three work together:
Yeah.
auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. So I often, when we visualize, it's good to feel the feeling, see it, and even hear it in your head.
Okay.
And
Hmm.
it's like in stereo. It's like in full stereo, and do that several times, because the interesting about the brain and the mind is it's not able to really distinguish reality from fiction or
Okay.
imagination.
Yeah.
So that's a technique that we can use, visualization. And there's been a ton of research that backs this up, that visualization does help with performance. Now it's not a miracle. I wouldn't say it's going to be like automatically make you a top star, or top talent, but it does help over time. And the important thing is to be consistent and do it several times.
Right. Right. So it's again practice. You have to keep practicing so
Yes,
that your brain can start forming those neural pathways that start to go towards believing it, believing it is actually happening and it can happen, as opposed to the opposite of, like, I'm going to be a disaster and it's going to be all bad.
yes, because that's where anxiety is. I mean, most of us, most people that are in anxiety are doing what I'm saying, but just the opposite. They're
Yeah.
visualizing what can go wrong. because
Right.
most of us, that's where a lot of us spend time in. We're either, we're not really living in the present moment. We're either thinking what can go wrong in the future or what went wrong in the past
Right.
instead of what's in front of us. So I would say definitely, start with that and do it over and over consistently. And then
Okay.
another thing also is your identity, the words you use, the language you use.
That's the
None of
Yeah,
That's a
that's the
linguistic part of it.
linguistic part of it. Yeah.
And it's not just the language we use externally, but also internally.
The
So
thoughts.
the thoughts. So, like for my actors, I often tell them to get rid of the vocabulary of "I'm a starving artist" or "I'm a struggling artist." Both from how you talk to other people versus how you describe it to yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Or you
because
can focus.
whatever you're telling yourself gets embedded in your brain, and then that
Mhm.
starts to become a reality for
Yeah,
you.
your brain says, "Okay, well, this is the reality. I'm going to create, this opportunity."
Yeah.
So those two components, I think, can work hand in hand together. And
Yeah.
that's where I think if you put all of those pieces together, that's like true NLP in action. And that's now also, I want to be, kind of like pragmatic and realistic about NLP is not going to replace traditional practice and coaching in whatever it is you're doing. So, like for acting, I recommend my actors go for traditional acting training and coaching on a regular basis. Um, the same thing. Why we need to be continually studying whatever discipline we're in.
Uh-huh.
What it'll do, I feel, is it'll get rid of the self doubt, so that when you actually do perform, you're actually performing at a much higher level. And there's a good chance, a great chance, when you're performing at such a high level like that you're going to be successful in whatever you set your mind to do.
Right. So it's not just about changing or visualizing what you want the outcome to be, but you also have to have skills and training to go along with it.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that's where I think a lot of, I'm sure, we were maybe 15 years ago, one of the biggest things that was on the market was like the law of attraction and manifestation. And which I feel is important, but I also felt there was a missing piece for that.
Yeah.
And the missing
And
piece was the actual skill set that was required, because I think it's important to have a positive mindset and to want to approach things, but there also has to be a practicality behind that too.
yeah. Mhm.
So, what if you want to, a six-figure income, what are you doing to get that?
Right.
Wanting it is great, but what skill set are you actually doing for that? How are you improving yourself? What books are you reading? What courses are you taking? What
Yeah.
skills are you learning in addition to the mindset? Yeah, the mindset is extremely important.
Right. But you
Vital.
have to have the skills to back it up.
Yes. Yes, you have to have the skills. And so that's where, like, I'll say, NLP is great. It's not going to make you a better actor. What's going to make you the better actor is training and experience, but you'll be able to approach it much more effective, and your personal power will be increased
Right.
tremendously
Right. Right.
when you have, your neural pathways going in the same direction that you really want to go into.
Right. Right. Now, how does hypnosis come into play here?
Well, I think hypnosis and NLP are very hand in hand. Working on limiting beliefs. And a lot of people think, and if any listener may sometimes the conception of hypnosis, you'll see people like, oh, I'm gonna snap my fingers and you're gonna act like a chicken or do a dance, and that's not what it is. I mean, yes, it's entertainment. That may be the entertainment value of it, but it's much more powerful than that. That and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go into a trance or like to go completely, like, lose a state of consciousness. What it refers to is just working on your subconscious beliefs.
Okay.
So part of what I use a lot is called wake hypnosis, which is again that mindset that goes with that mindset, that language we use, the
Hmm.
NLP aspect of it. And working with your identity, imagining yourself as being successful, priming yourself each day that it's going to be a great day.
Right.
Um, visualizing your day going well
Yeah.
before the day happens.
Right. Right. And so the hypnosis part of it, what you're saying is that, unlike what we traditionally think of hypnosis is like, somebody snaps a finger and you act like a chicken. That's not what you are doing. What you are doing is
Mhm.
changing maybe their brainwave, and
Yeah,
like, taking it to a level where they are more receptive to the positive, mindset
yeah,
information and things like that, that they can now really incorporate that into their self-talk and internally, so they can start to visualize and act and believe in that.
100%. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And it just is about changing limiting beliefs. That's really what it's all about. Changing your limiting beliefs and into more empowering beliefs and more empowering yourself.
Right.
And it's not magic. It may appear that way, but there's no magic. I don't look at it as magic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a normal state, and we go into hypnosis several times a day. Whether it's we watch a movie, we get engrossed in the movie. We read a book, we get engrossed in the book. You forget about time, or even when you're driving. Sometimes, if you like drive a long distance, and after you get to your destination, it seems like you just left 10 minutes ago, even though
Yeah.
you've been driving for almost an hour. You went into a trance. You zoned out,
Right,
in a
right. Now, would you say that is similar to being in flow?
100%, yeah. Because when you're in flow, the conception of time is distorted,
Yeah.
and you're much more going to be in a better mindset to be productive in whatever it is you're in. So that's where a trance comes in, and where I say, even though it might look like you're relaxing, but actually a trance is we're putting you in that flow state. So that's why we might, have you take deep breaths or take, relax, or like go into, relaxation, or, counting down. What we're doing is we're creating that flow state artificially, so
Okay.
that you're able to be more, productive and receptive to empowering beliefs in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, how would you say somebody can use this who is not an actor?
Uh, well, I would definitely say, you can use this for what if you have to give a presentation at work, if you have to take a test, if you have to do any type of pitching, your services out there. So again, just visualize that going very, very well, and play that movie in your head and over again. And again, just really get into it, not just imagining it, but actually get into that picture, feel it,
Yeah.
see it, hear it, what's going around, and then just really spend time there. 10 minutes a day, even,
Yeah.
and do it consistently, not just one time. It has to be, consistently,
Right.
and
Right.
just do and look at your always. The mindset is that you're a professional. You're a working professional. You're not
Right.
an aspiring, whether even people on this call. You're not an aspiring therapist. If you went to school or got training, you're a professional therapist.
Right. Right.
Especially if
So,
you're licensed. And,
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, no, I was just gonna say, you're trained. When you have that training, you're a professional.
Yes.
And
Yeah. And this brings me to the point of the imposter syndrome. I know that a lot of times professionals are struggling with that. Even even people who are very, very successful could be struggling
Mhm.
with that. So tell us a little bit about, how that fits into, or how somebody who is struggling with imposter syndrome can benefit from the kind of work that you are doing.
Sure. Well, first, I want to say imposter syndrome, is normal. It's a normal thing. So I will validate. That's the first step, is to validate what you're feeling is completely understandable. I would say then connect to your training. What or connect to the main reason why you're set out to do what you do. Why did you become a therapist, or why did you, want to become an actor, or, a presenter, and really
Mhm.
connect to that reason. And then what I would say is, now think back to a time where you had a great session with a client, or a great presentation, or a great audition. Recall that, and then I might put them, in a light flow state, and imagine that, and just keep going through that over and over again. So that's, one step I would do. And then, I would take the using an NLP supposition. There's no such thing as failure, only feedback.
I'm
So
sorry.
even if
Come again?
there's no such thing as failure, only
Oh,
feedback.
okay.
So,
Yes. Yes.
if you, let's say you make that pitch, or you give that presentation, or you take that test, or you get that audition, and it doesn't go in your favor,
Yeah. Hmm.
rather than viewing that as a failure, look at that as feedback. What can you do next time to refine it? Maybe refine your
Absolutely.
pitch, refine your
Absolutely.
presentation, and celebrate that as a win, because very often what we view as failure is we're over blowing it in our head, blowing it out of proportion.
Yeah. Hmm.
Because I've
Hmm.
I've had a lot of speakers. Sometimes they'll give a speech of like, "Oh, I did such a I did such a bad job," and the audience is like, "This was great,"
Yes. Yes.
because a lot of times we're in our head, and we're noticing things that aren't there. So just being easy on ourselves is one thing, and then
Very true.
and we're human. We are going to make mistakes. We are
Yes.
going to, make errors, and that's where that feedback comes in. What can you do next time
Right.
to improve that?
Yes.
And
It's that
and
self compassion, having self
yeah,
compassion and allowing yourself to learn and grow as opposed to expecting yourself to be perfect.
100%. And that's the whole thing. We're not going to be perfect.
Yes. Hmm. So, but in the client community that you work with, it is probably very hard because they are being judged physically for what they're doing, and so
Yeah,
it's very harsh being told, no, you're not good enough.
yeah. I mean, and I would reframe that, because one of the things I often hear a lot of people say who want to be actors, I can't deal with the rejection, and I'm like, let's reframe that. Because first of all, what do they mean by rejection? And they'll be like, "Well, I didn't get the role." I'm like, "That's different than rejection. That just means that your services weren't needed today." So it's not rejection. It's just that this role was not meant for you, or not the right one for you.
Right.
So I think that's the main thing, is taking that, separating yourself. It's not personal.
I think that's where again, your the languaging becomes very important, and you're shifting the word rejection to you're not a good fit.
Yeah, it's just not your services aren't needed today.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all it
Yeah.
is. Your service as a performer, or as a presenter, or as a therapist, or a counselor, is not needed for this person right now.
Right.
And that's all it is. And if you can separate that, it'll be much easier, rather
Right.
than putting your whole self-worth on that one particular thing, like, oh, well, they don't like me. No, it has nothing to do with that.
Absolutely. And I have to say that I've been doing therapy for a long time, over 30 years. So,
Mhm.
but there are lots of new therapists who may feel that, oh, such and such client left a bad review about me, or they left after the first session. What's wrong with me? Why did they not like me? And that kind of stuff. And so, what is your kind of feedback or advice about
Yeah.
that?
Well, I would say, okay, then look, take a hard look at what happened. Um, and if it was an error that you made, what can you do in the future now? Now you learn. It's a teaching moment. Or, even again with the whole mindset, switching your mindset and saying, that may have nothing to do with me. You know,
Yeah.
maybe you as a, you reminded them of their parent or their, judgmental relative as a therapist, and they just didn't. You weren't the right fit, for them, and so therefore they needed to feel the power to, write that bad review about
Right.
you or the negative review. So, and as you know, there's a such thing as transference often in the double what we
Absolutely.
do,
Yeah. Hmm.
and it could be a big major factor with that, right? Getting
Hmm.
that mindset. Look, this has nothing to do with me. It has to do with their themselves, their past, their thing,
Right.
and that was their way of taking control of a situation. And again, if there is something that maybe you could have done differently, we'll use that as a learning opportunity, as feedback, and say, okay, next time this is not. I won't make this mistake again. I know this
Right.
is what I need to look out for. So the main thing is compassion and just taking a more realistic standpoint
Right, right.
of that.
And I mean, one thing that I do when I have a new client is I very clearly kind of explain to them my way of working and my style of working. And I
Mhm.
also let them know that it's not going to be a good fit for everybody. So if they find that I'm not a good fit, there's, no harm, nothing, it's fine. I would be happy to refer them to somebody else. But, obviously, it took a while to come to that kind of understanding for myself, and
Mhm.
acceptance of that, for me. So, I mean, I tend to be very directive. I tend to be very kind of like, hey, you're not skating by, you're going to do the work, that kind of stuff. And that's not a good style for everybody. Some people just need their hands held, some people just need somebody to listen to them, some
Yeah,
people don't want someone who's pushing them to move forward and make changes, and that's absolutely okay. And so I like to make sure I tell people that, this is my style and this
yeah,
is what I will probably do, and if it doesn't work for you, no problems. But
yeah.
I'm not the right person, right therapist for everybody. And I think
Of course.
sometimes it's clients are so relieved to hear that, because oftentimes they'll come to me and say, well, I saw somebody, but I didn't go back. And then they feel guilty and they're like, I don't know. They don't want to say anything bad about the therapist. And I'm like, no, it's not about that the therapist did something wrong. It just wasn't a good fit.
Good for you, right? And I think what you're also saying, another term we often use is called calibrating. So you calibrate to the client. Some people need more hand holding. Some people need sometimes a little bit of tough love, where you have to
Yeah.
get a little. I don't want to say in your face, but a little more confrontational sometimes.
Mhm.
That's not going to work for every client, but that might be. So you have to look at the person in front of you. Another
Right.
thing, this is why, like, a lot of times I'm not a big fan of, like, scripts or, like, one size fits all therapies, because, you have to work with the client in front of you sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So before we end today, I want you to tell us about your book.
Sure. Well, the book is called Rise Above the Script, Confronting Self-Doubt and Mastering Self-Sabotage for Performing Artists. It's on Amazon. It's also Kindle, ebook, and audiobook, if you're
Okay.
it's also available on audiobook. But it deals with what we were talking about, like self-sabotage, self-doubt, fear of success, imposter syndrome. And even though it's geared towards actors, there's something for everybody. So I recommend checking the book out even if you're not a performing artist,
Okay.
because it
All
can really
right.
help you and even help your clients out too.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Bramante. I really appreciate you coming on our podcast and the time that you spent with me. I really appreciate that. And hopefully, we will see you again.
That would be great. I really appreciate you having me here, Amita. Thank you.